Warm and spring-like in the east, and it could result in some record highs mid and late week. In the meantime, winter is settled in the west, and we've got numerous winter storm warnings and winter weather advisories throughout the western U.S. We will look at all of this, examine the long range, and well, who knows what else? All sorts of subject matters come up right here every night on the Joe and Joe Weather Show, brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York, in southwest Suffolk County on Long Island, serving the entire New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, tri-state area. And as we gradually make this transition over to spring, laying aside the spring-like weather of this week, Omni will go from salt to mulch and topsoil and anything else you need to make your yard and house look great. 631-756-1125 is the telephone number. Nowhere can you find better prices. And of course, the website is
OmniTrueValue.com. And Joe, like
yeah.
a zoologist who's excited to discover a new animal species, Dr. Judith Cohen has announced on his latest Twitter post that in today's blog, now available for an early look, I think you have to pay for it, but he does give a clue. He says, I share similar excitement to discover a new type of polar vortex disruption that I hope will help to understand and predict the upcoming weather. In other words, I'm going to know.
Well, I'll have to tell you, Joe, Tony Gigi. First of all, welcome to everybody tonight on the chat board. Welcome to the Joe and Joe Weather Show. Those of you who are lurking about in the background, we know you're there. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, and you can get notifications about the Joe and Joe Weather Show because we're on Monday through Thursday at 7:35, Sundays at 11 a.m., and we're off on Fridays and Saturdays, but every once in a while we show up at least often enough to keep the franchise going. So go ahead and subscribe. Now, back to Tony Gigi. Tony Gigi retired National Weather Service meteorologist from Mount Holly, New Jersey, covering central and south Jersey, also parts of northwest Jersey, and much of eastern Pennsylvania. Now, this is for Philadelphia. And I think this goes, this kind of goes to the heart of what I was saying, and probably what Dr. Judah Cohen is saying too. I don't know. The implications of this polar vortex disruption is not a gimme. And what Tony did, and I'll just put this chart up here, and I'll get myself out of the way. So he went back, Joe, back to 2001 and looked at the onset of a polar vortex disruption, a stratospheric warming event, and the outcomes of those events. And they have resulted, at least now for Philadelphia. Now, it could be totally different for New York. But anyway, the results are mixed. There were polar vortex disruptions. For example, there was one at the end of December of 2001. And you had a straight stretch of below normal temperatures that went from January 1st to January 8th because of that disruption. It resulted in a trace of snow, and that was in a no La Nina, no El Nino. It was a La Nada environment. So that resulted in a trace. The February 11th of 2001, and this covers the dates from February 17th to March 10th. That was a stretch of below normal temperatures. That produced 8 inches of snow, and a La Nina was getting underway. So we went from an Enso neutral, well, I'm sorry, that was earlier in the year. So 2/11/01 was earlier in the year. And then the winter of 01/02 with an Enso neutral year didn't do much of anything. Then you go to 2008 From February 27th to the 29th, 3 days of below normal temperatures, a trace of snow in a La Nina winter. And that was not a snowy winter by any means, 07, 08. Then on the other hand, you go from in 2010, January 31st, 2010 was the date of the disruption. You had below normal temperatures from the 5th of February to the 17th of February, then a little break, and then another stretch from the 21st to the 28th. Inside that period, Joe produced 50.9 inches of snow in Philadelphia.
Ouch. Ouch.
And there were actually 2 stratospheric warming events, and that was a strong El Nino year. So you can't really figure what to expect out of this because, at least from the standpoint of looking at Philadelphia, and I'm going to guess that in New York, if you looked at New York City, you probably would have some similarities and some differences. I don't think you really can glean much of anything with regarding what this stratospheric warming event is going to do, what the implications are. It could be nothing. It could be substantial. It could be something in between. So there's no real value in this when you look at the data. I don't think anybody knows.
So what you're saying is that Dr. Cohen, who's been relying or has really done a lot of research over the years on polar vortices and the relation to El Nino or La Nina, but now he's saying that he believes he's found a brand new piece to the puzzle with this crazy setup that we've had so far this year, this winter season, and that maybe we should add on that, whatever comes out of this. I don't know. I really don't. I really don't. At this point, I have no clue, and I know you don't either. And we could just play it by a day-by-day basis. Maybe in a few minutes, we'll take a look at the GFS and still see if they're cooking up that system for like 280 hours down the road. Although I know the answer already to that.
Yeah. Well, we have our daily GFS fantasy run, which was the 18Z today. Yesterday it was the 12Z run that gave double-digit snow amounts, even 20 to 30-inch snow amounts in the D.C. area in Baltimore. So that quickly went away. Now there's bizarre fantasies going on the 18Z. So my best approach to all of this is the trend is your friend. This is what we have right now until we see genuine signs of it breaking down and going to something else. It is just, we just plod along. Every day is one day closer to the end of this miserable winter season, at least for snow lovers. I mean, am I right? What else? Do you want to be a hero and try to forecast something?
No.
No, I don't. I certainly don't. And I honestly, I don't even, there are times when I've looked at what's been going on, with respect to up in the stratosphere, and I pulled a couple of rabbits out of the hat over the last 5 years with that sort of thing. So it's not that I haven't done it before, but I'm just being honest. I'm looking at what's happening, and it's like, boy, this looks really weird, and I don't know what to make of it.
And Keith James II says, can someone please explain why the GFS always puts out storms 280 hours out? Is it a glitch in the computer that it defaults to that setting?
I don't know if I thought it was 264, but 264 or 280. Let's use that whole time frame, somewhere between 264 and 280 hours. All through this winter, that has been sort of the magic moment that the model just decides that, okay, here's where we're going to have a pattern change. Here's where we're going to put a snowstorm in. And it never happens. Okay. And the Europeans know better because the European on a few occasions this winter has done its share of trying to make something happen that wound up being, total nonsense.
Yeah, well, I'm just reading a few of these. He said, Matt Coletta says, Joe, you sound like the offensive coordinator for the Jets. how can we get a touchdown?
Oh, God. Look, it all boils down to one thing. If you look at this watches and warnings map, see, and this goes to what I've also been saying about you folks that are so zip code oriented. Whatever happens in my zip code applies to everybody. Well, there is winter going on. It's just that it's not where you are. It's out in the west. And the map is the watches and warnings map tonight, Joe, in the western part of the United States is what is that? How would you describe that in artist terms? It's like somebody
Technicolor.
Yeah, it's sort of Technicolor. That's good. I mean, and the other thing I would point out is, where do you see winter storm warnings and winter weather advisories where you don't want to see them? In the western part of Oregon, the whole coastal range from Northern California up the coast of Oregon into Washington along the coast, all under winter weather advisories, and just inland. And they're going for snow levels in the coastal range, Joe, below 2,000 feet. They're going to 2 to 6 inches in a lot of the areas below 2,000 feet, and up to a foot or more above 2,000 feet. You got winter storm warnings up in places that when they're up there, the weather in the east is exactly the opposite, and we're spring-like. It's going to get more spring-like, and maybe before it's all said and done, some records are going to go by the board.
Wow. And here in the east, I mean, we already crunched, at least here in the Hudson Valley, one record a few days ago where it was the record was 55. We got it to 59 at Westchester County Airport, and now we may be challenging records again later on in the week.
What are the records for Wednesday and Thursday by you?
Let's see. The date is the 15th, right? Yeah, Wednesday and Thursday.
Right, the 15th, 16th, and 17th. Wednesday, Thursday, into Friday.
Right.
Depending on the timing of the cold front on Friday.
The 15th, it's 67. The 16th of February at Westchester County Airport, 66. Both of those records, the 15th and the 16th, were set in 1954. And then on the 17th, a year which I remember mostly as a winter that I remember mostly as cold, but not this particular day. This is February 17th, 63 degrees in 1976.
I guess they're all doable. Thursday's going to depend on we've got a warm front that's going to come through, so that's going to depend on showers and clouds and everything else. Although it may still be in the 60s, you just don't know whether it's going to go on the high end or the low end. But I still hold a Wednesday. I think Wednesday could be a day where we could have some, certainly into the 60s and maybe a few runaway highs. Right. We'll get up mid to upper 60s. Maybe somebody in South Jersey or down in northern Maryland into Delaware could see 70. Not out of the question. But the West is going to do well with this. We've got it's several systems, by the way, and I was looking at the forecast for Flagstaff. Okay, this is a forecast that folks around here, snow lovers around here, I think would pay good money for, Joe. So here's Flagstaff's forecast. So again, it's several systems moving through. So they've got snow in the forecast tonight through the daytime Wednesday. 1 to 2 inches tonight. 1 to 3. For the remainder of this afternoon, 1 to 2 inches. Okay, and it was 31 and snowing on the but now it's 30 and it stopped snowing there. When I checked a little while ago, it was 31 and snowing. Tonight, 1 to 3. Tuesday, 6 to 10. Tuesday night, 3 to 5. And a 20% chance of snow showers on Wednesday, patchy blowing snow before 7 a.m., then mostly sunny. So basically snowing into early Wednesday morning. So from now into early Wednesday morning. So that would be, 30 hours worth of 30 hours worth of snow consecutively. That doesn't happen often. I mean, it's happened in some big events in our neck of the woods where we've snowed for over spread out over 2 days, but that's a once in a great while type of thing.
I was in the high country, the high desert of Arizona this past spring, visiting someone, and they were about 6,000 feet above sea level, and that's about the. I think that's about the same as what Flagstaff is. So I'm pretty sure that where my friend lives is probably getting pretty much the same amount of snow. And you say to yourself, it's great to live there during the summer, during the oppressive spells of heat, like Tucson, for example, and Phoenix, getting up to above 100 degrees. And when you climb upwards to 6,000 feet, oh, it's so much nicer up here. The weather is so much cooler. But that's the drawback of living up there is what you just mentioned in the wintertime, because they'll get these kind of storms, they'll get these kind of snowfalls that'll really pile up very quickly over a span of less than a couple of days. And that's why when you see that map on the screen right now that Joe's showing, that the northern half is mostly pink and blue, indicating storm watches, snow warnings, snow advisories, you name it, they get it in this type of scenario.
Izzy D is our first super chat hit of the night. Thank you, Izzy. Most appreciated. Merrill Montrose, Joe, says, how far back do weather records go? Well, Merrill, that depends on the station. So, for example, New York City's records go back to 1869. Um, the White Plains records go back pretty far, don't they?
19. I'm very surprised that they're not including White Plains. You could go online and you can see temperature records, daily temperature records at White Plains going all the way back to when the airport first was built in 1951. That's more than enough to qualify it as a first-rate station for weather records. But they don't do that, and maybe the reason why they don't do that is because they need somebody to do the compiling. And the only one who might have done that, who I know did do that many years ago, is now no longer with us. Dr. Jerry Thaler, an expert in climatology in the Hudson Valley, the Catskills, and the Adirondacks. When I came to News 12 in 1995, I went to him and I said, "Do you have any records?" He said, "Certainly, I have records," and he provided me with them. And ever since then, that's 1995, I've been religiously updating them temperature-wise. The problem with Dr. Jerry's records, Joe, is that he also included records from a cooperative weather observer in the White Plains area who lived there in the mid 1850s to like mid 1880s. I forget the gentleman's name, but sprinkled among all of the records of the airport are records from this guy from going back. And so there's a wide open space, a wide gap between, let's say, 1880 and 1951. You say, well, what happened then? Well, we don't know because there was nobody keeping records. But he includes these extreme temperatures, hot and cold, from the cooperative observer, as opposed to going with records from the airport. In other words, if the airport did not surpass or do one better than what this guy did for certain dates in terms of extreme heat or extreme cold, then he keeps those records from the observer. But again, you can't do it that way. You got to have records straight on through at the airport, temperature records and snow and precipitation records. And again, the only one who would have done that, I think, is Dr. Thaler, but he passed away about 4 or 5 years ago at the ripe old age of 90. So unless there's somebody else who is going to step up to the plate, go on the internet and make listings of all of those temperature records and all of those precip and snow records, unless somebody does that, White Plains does not get included in the other list of places like Central Park,
Right.
Newark, Bridgeport, JFK, LaGuardia, Islip.
Yeah, and Islip Islip's records are kind of suspect anyway because that what didn't become a 24-hour station until sometime in the early 2000s. So there's a lot of missing snow data in particular because
And you
the
remember,
airport was basically shut down from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. So if it snowed at night, it never got measured.
right?
Brookhaven Labs has kept pretty good weather records going back to from the early 1940s. And their snow records there are actually quite good. And then there was the gentleman, I forgot his name, Joe, God forgive me. There was the gentleman in Bridgehampton that
Who passed away a few years ago.
yeah, and he basically kept records for like 90 years, whatever it was. I don't know if anybody's picked up and continued those, but yeah. Otherwise, as Keith James points out, yeah, the airports are where we get in OBS, and it's all concrete, concrete on the runway, unless they put the weather station in some grassy knoll someplace. And
I see.
Steve
See, I have
Lapointe
my little my. Yeah, okay. So mention
I just want to
Steve.
say Steve Lapointe hitting super chat, reminding us that the 1972-73 record in New York City, 2.8 inches of snow, the least snowiest on record, continues to remain perilously in jeopardy.
Yes.
I'm
And you
sorry,
mentioned
you
those.
were showing a book there.
And well, this is my little red book where I have all kinds of phone numbers of various people. And I will mention one particular person who I doubt very much is still around. Norm DeVoskin, who we worked with at News 12 Long Island. Norm had or acquired the list of weather records from Brookhaven Labs, but he also had a couple of longtime weather observers. And one of them, here's a name that may ring a bell with you, Joe, Helen Proud, who kept weather records at Orient Point. She was the Orient weather watcher, and I've got her phone number, but I don't. Like I said, the names in this book go back over 30 years, and Helen was already up in years when we started working with her. And there were a couple of other people here. Who was the gentleman who used to send us or call us up with observations from Noyak
Oh,
out in
Don Thompson. Don
Don Thompson?
Thompson.
Right. Yeah, he's in my book too. Don Thompson, right there. Well, anyway, these are people who kept records religiously and provides us with all kinds of information when we were doing the weather for News 12 Long Island, but we're not doing it anymore, so who cares?
Well, that was subtle as a garlic sandwich. Um, hang on, I got to send. I'm sending somebody the link to our show because he's trying to subscribe to my YouTube channel with his Gmail account and hasn't quite figured it out yet. So I'm gonna just take a moment here to do that, and then we're gonna get to the weather. Of course, just what I need to stall for time. It's just taking
Here's
forever.
another name. Tom Contino brings up another name, Dick Simmons.
I actually lived I could almost walk to his house. I lived very close to Dick Simmons. I used to run into him from time to time.
He passed away, according to Tom Contino, another longtime weather nut who would drive around in snowstorms getting data. Yeah, Dick was a great guy to work with. Helen Proud again, and Don Thompson. I mean, these are people from part of our weather past, and I'm still in touch with Gary Stone of the Long Island Weather Observers Club, and yeah, so these are guys who are, weather groupies. They go out and they take the records, keep them, and then we go on the air and tell everybody about them.
Okay, good. You stalled long enough. I appreciate it. Thank you. There we go. All right, now let me get that map back up so we can do some weather, which is what we're known for. It's what we live for here on the Joe and Joe Weather Show. Oh, by the way, I'm not going to put the graphic up. Yeah, this is one of those things where I really struggle with this, Joe. A certain television station in New York, I shall not mention which one it is because I don't want to even remotely send them one additional viewer if I don't have to. Okay. But so they did this graphic this morning, and thanks James Harris for sending it to me. But they did. You'd love this. So what did they do? Um, to imply that it was going to be warm all week, so they had the high temperatures for Tuesday, for Monday, for Tuesday, for Wednesday, for Thursday, for Friday. Then they have the high temperatures for um, Sunday, next Monday, next Tuesday, next Wednesday. However long their infinity forecast was going. For Saturday morning, Joe, for Saturday, instead of putting the high temperature, they put the low temperature of 24 for Saturday morning. That's what they're forecasting. So, I mean, it was so the implication was that we were going to get like another big Arctic blast. I mean, that's how I would read it. If you're putting all high temperatures on a map and then you stick in a one low temperature to represent a day in between, that that's just a little bit deceptive. I mean, on the level of criminal, that's not, obviously, that's no big deal. Who cares? But it just annoys me. It's just an obvious, just an obvious audience grab.
It's all about ratings.
I know.
And Helen Bertona makes the comment about the station that you may be alluding to on the chat board. But
yes,
anyway.
They have gas.
Let me tell you something.
They have gas bags covering both shifts.
I mean, if you want entertainment between, let's say, 5 and 6 o'clock, then maybe what they ought to be doing, although he's no longer with us either, but they should go back to the Mike Douglas show, which was on from 4:30 to 6 back in the day.
Oh, and, you know what? I don't know. Were you a fan of the Bowery Boys?
Because they Channel 5 on Saturday afternoons.
Because they were Turner Classic Movies was running a couple of Bowery Boys movies tonight, so I had to turn it off. I actually knew he passed away, a cousin of Huntz Hall, and he had a script that Huntz Hall had written. A movie script of some kind. It was pretty interesting. Anyway, that's my closeness to Hollywood, folks. Okay, I mean, when you're practically that close, when you're that close, okay.
And Huntz Hall was the goofy-looking guy, right? The guy with the sad face like this. And who was the guy who played the tough guy role?
That was Leo. Wasn't that Leo Gorcey?
Leo Gorcey. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was some episode where some little girl was in dire need of an operation, and they tracked down a doctor, and Leo Gorcey tells the doctor, he says, "You got to help her, Doc. You got to help her. We'll give you all the money you've ever seen in the world, $53 to do the operation."
Exactly. All right, there you go, folks. Winter storm warnings up for the West Coast, the western part of Oregon. Winter weather advisories and a few winter storm warnings up for the western part of Washington. Winter weather advisories for northwestern California. Okay. Then we've got winter storm warnings for the northern half of Arizona, southwestern Colorado down into New Mexico. Advisories in southern Utah. Winter storm watches in southeastern Colorado up to, I don't know if Denver's included in this. They might be just on the edge. Also into Nebraska. We've got winter weather advisories and winter storm warnings in northern Wyoming and southern Montana, with advisories expanding out through most of the state of Montana. Winter storm watches for eastern, North and South Dakota and northwestern Minnesota. Wind advisories all across the Southwest and through Texas into the lower and middle Mississippi Valley, even kind of nosing its way into Kentucky and Tennessee and northern Alabama. And from Maine to Florida, it's a weather snooze fest, which is okay. Here's the let me update this satellite loop because this was from earlier today. I don't know what they did. the GOES folks, because these used to automatically update through the day. Every time a new frame would come in, it would automatically update on my computer. Now I got to manually do it. They're just kind of saving on memory, I guess. Coastal storm that grazed parts of New Jersey and southeastern New England. You can see the low is fairly wrapped up there south of Nova Scotia, with clouds blowing up over there and over Newfoundland. But the weather in much of the east is fine and dandy and quiet, and actually even all across the Midwest. You could see the potpourri of weather systems in the Southwest. There's just several short waves that are in play here rather than one gigantic one. There's just, there's the energy sort of spread out. And on the radar at the moment, again, let me freshen this up. We actually have some precip going on in parts of upstate New York. There's a couple of showers there in northeast Pennsylvania. There's a weather front that's moving on through, Joe. It's a cold front. It's very exciting. Precip aloft in Vermont, New Hampshire, back into Massachusetts and parts of Connecticut. Meanwhile, we've got showers breaking out in central Texas, rain and snow in New Mexico, snow in Colorado, and also some patches of snow in Arizona. And you can see what's going on up in the Northwest, where we've got rain and snow from western Washington down into Oregon and into Northern California. And here's that really exciting cold front, Joe, 21Z, running from about Messina, New York to Binghamton, cutting across Pennsylvania into West Virginia. And what a cold front it is. I'm looking here. This was at 4 o'clock this afternoon. Get a grip on this temperature contrast. You're going to fall off your chair. So it was 58 is what I'm seeing here as an observation. Probably that's either Newark or Teterboro. And so it's 58 on the east side of the front. It's 54 in Pittsburgh on the west side.
Yeah.
So they've got a cold front drawn. I mean, technically it probably is a cold front because there's a wind shift. You go from southwest to northwest. I mean, it's in the 40s in Michigan, for God's sake. It's in the upper 40s in northern Michigan. There's a station up there that's reporting 47 at 4 o'clock this afternoon. It's in the 40s in Wisconsin, 50s and 60s through Illinois and Missouri, 60s and 70s from the Carolinas down into Georgia. And meanwhile, out in the west, I mean, it's cold, but it's nothing crazy. It's not Arctic cold. Mostly temperatures here are in the 30s and low 40s. Right along the coast, it's in the low 40s, and there's colder air that's going to come down from the north. But it's just no big deal. This is as non-winter a surface map as you're probably going to see.
Unbelievable. And once again, here in the Hudson Valley, we're talking about temperatures. And, the normal temperature, the normal high for this time of the year is around 41 degrees. And here I'm just looking at the GFSX, the extended MOS guidance, taking us all the way out to next Tuesday. And for White Plains, here you see, again, normal is 41. We got 48 tomorrow. We've got your favorite term, Joe, double nickels, 55 on Wednesday, 58 on Thursday.
These are the highs?
And then it drops off. These are the projected highs on the...
Kind of lowish.
Well, these are what, conditional readings or whatever. They can be up and down a little bit. But I mean, like, even lowish, or even if you just leave them the way they are, 48, there's 7 degrees above normal. 55, there's 14 above normal. 58, that's 17 above normal. That's for Thursday. Then it drops back. Friday, 45. They actually put us down back in the 30s. They actually put us slightly below normal, 38 as opposed to 41 for the normal on Saturday. They're suggesting a chillier day then, and then back up again, 49 on Sunday, 49 on Monday. It just goes on and on and on and on.
But don't forget Don't forget that 24 on Saturday. Just let's be clear on this. So the rainfall the liquid precip amounts coming this week with whatever we get at the end of the week with the next cold front approaching from the west. Looking at a quarter of an inch to maybe some places getting up to a half an inch in the northeast, down into the mid-Atlantic states. 3/4 of an inch to an inch and a half in the Appalachians, the Ohio Valley, down to the Gulf Coast, to back across Arkansas, and then northward up the Mississippi Valley, all the way up into Minnesota and around the lakes. Uh, Anywhere from a quarter of an inch to an inch and a half of liquid precip in Arizona. Of course, they've got those advisories and warnings up. That's going to be snow. And also up in northern New Mexico and into western and southern Colorado. Also across Montana, northern Wyoming, up into Idaho, and in Oregon and Washington. There's your snow probability map. So let's just wipe up the West with everybody's at a probability for at least 2 inches here. Looking at this, particularly in Colorado, in northern New Mexico, into Arizona, across southern Montana and in northern Wyoming, and you see the red areas in the Cascades and even in the coastal ranges showing probabilities of 50% or more for at least 2. Let us now go to 8. And you see where the 8-inch probabilities are in the mountains of Oregon, also in southwestern Colorado, fairly high probability, almost a 90 to 95% probability for at least 8, and a 50% probability across southern Montana. Why don't we try for 12? And yeah, look, southwestern Colorado, just they're in sort of a jackpot zone here. And of course, if we look in the east, if I go back to the probability of 2. Yeah, it looks like splatterings of mold in northern New York and up in northern Vermont and northern New Hampshire, where it's 5 to 20%, Joe, 5 to at most 20% chance for at least 2. And on the long range, there it is. This is for Thursday into Friday. Always do that. Sorry about that, folks. Thursday into Friday. Let me get the state borders on. 10 to 30 from northern Missouri and Iowa, northeastward across the lakes, 30 to 50 in northern Michigan and back to a small portion of southeast Wisconsin. Nothing in the northeast at all. Friday into Saturday, we've got Vermont, northern New Hampshire, northern New York, and much of Maine at a 10 to 30% chance for at least a few inches. On Sunday, nothing. Monday, nothing. Nothing, Joe. Not a flake, not an ice pellet, nothing.
And Monday, of course, is President's Day, and we've had a couple of some of the biggest snowstorms in this part of the country coincide with President's Day, 1979 and 1979 and 2003. The 2003 dumping about 20 inches of snow on the Hudson Valley, and you got to think, Joe, that the ski resorts are really hurting. I mean, even when they try to make snow, they have to wait until later in the night for the temperatures to drop to or even below freezing for them to turn on the snow machines. And what happens the next day? It's like spring skiing conditions. All of the snow starts to melt or go away. It has really been tough for those who rely on wintertime here in the Northeast. But as I've said before, the man upstairs likes to balance the checkbook, and while we haven't had all that much this year, it could very well be next year or the year after. It's going to be more than enough snow for all of you to desire. So it's not, as you said it best, Joe. If people were saying it's climate change, it's global warming, we're never going to see winter again, and you were absolutely right. If we have 10 of these kind of winters in a row, then it's time to make a consideration that, things are changing. But we're not going to have 10 of these in a row. I don't know if it's going to be next year or the year after, but we are going to come back big time, gangbusters, with lots of cold and lots of snow in this part of the country. This year, so far, that has not been the case.
Lou Alessi brings up yesterday, because it was I did try to drive up to Brasstown Bald yesterday, Joe. The roads were closed at the mountains. Lou says, did you drive to the higher elevations to see the snow on the mountains? Saw on YouTube Reed Trimmer was on the North Carolina-Tennessee border at 4,000 feet where it was snowing pretty good. Yeah, so you had to really be above 4,000 feet because when I got to the entrance of Brasstown Bald, I'm just guessing that that's at around the 3,000, maybe 32, 3,300 foot level. It was rain and gloppy flakes at that level. But the road to go up was shut down, so I couldn't get up to the top, which is up at about 4,800 feet. And we saw on the webcams yesterday that it was snowing rather hard up there. I'm sure they got at least a few inches. And I know in the mountain on the drive on the Richard Russell Scenic Highway, which is the road you take through the mountains to get to Helen, Georgia, which is a really nice touristy German town, Joe. I think Mrs. Rayo would love it. Actually, she might want to think about getting a German club to plan a trip to Helen, Georgia, but no matter. But you go, you go through, you climb up, and I don't know how high it is, but you get pretty high, and the road is really narrow there. I drove it at 2 o'clock in the morning 2 weeks ago, but they said that they got about a dusting to an inch up in those peaks from what I heard. So here we've got the upper air pattern, and of course this is going back to Saturday. You see the upper low moving across the southern states. It's another deep upper low dropping down into Southern California and Arizona. Yesterday's storm gets kicked out to the east and then lifts up toward Nova Scotia and Newfoundland. And then once that trough pulls out on Tuesday, we get back into a ridge position. And you see it's a series of troughs here in the west. One cutoff low, followed by another short wave dropping down from the northwest coast into the southwest, which is why we have this sort of prolonged 3-day event. This is Wednesday afternoon, what you're seeing on the screen now. The ridge in the east just stays. We get a trough to swing through with the cold front on Friday. That goes out. As soon as that goes out, what happens? The ridge doesn't really pop up, but it's a warm west to westerly flow because the trough is in the west again. Another deep trough in the west. Then the ridge pops up. This is Monday and Tuesday, the 20th and 21st. Ridge pops up over the Bahamas. You get a deep trough in the middle of the country. That swings east later next week, and this is part of the GFS fantasy. But by the way, look at what goes on in the West. This is it's so unrelenting, Joe. Trough after trough after. There's another one. Look at that. Another trough. This is late next week. Another deep trough dropping down in the west. The ridge pops right back up. Now, what starts to change, and I think this probably has to do with what's going on in the atmosphere, is if you look on the upper center over Greenland and points east, there is a building high there. So you might think, okay, maybe there's some kind of block developing. Well, at least through this forecast period, it's probably too far to the east. And while we do get a deep trough on this run that comes through around the 25th or 26th of February, guess what? It lifts right out, and then the next trough gets ready to drop into the western part of the United States, and we're back to where we're back on March 1st to probably pretty much where we are now.
Wash, rinse, repeat.
The unrelenting nature of this to me, because this now will probably be 9 weeks if this pattern holds into March. Now, it wasn't the same pattern. Let's be clear. The pattern through the first 3 weeks of January was a Pacific fire hose. We don't really have that. That changed after the middle part of January to another just as unfavorable a pattern for the eastern part of the United States. It was just It's just different. But it doesn't make a difference because the outcome in the east is the same either way. But here, I guess what everybody's struggling with is if we look at the stratosphere. So the vortex in the stratosphere is actually working get for this time of year. It's usually starts to weaken as we go through the latter part of February into March, but it's way ahead of itself. So I'm just going to roll back here to where we are today. So this is what it looks like now. You see they got that one wrapped up vortex sitting over Scandinavia, and all that red is the stratospheric warming event, big upper high sitting over the Arctic region in northwest Canada and Alaska. So, Joe, what happens is if you look at the way this kind of stretches, and there's a little mini vortex this is going to be for when? What's the date on this? So Sunday, February 19th. So that's in 6 days. There's a mini vortex that breaks off and sitting over Pennsylvania and New Jersey. And the main vortex is still up in Siberia, and that just sort of spirals around and weakens some more. I mean, almost falls apart. As I said at the beginning of the show, I don't know what the implications of this are because I've never seen this before. Not like this. So your guess is as good as mine.
Almost sounds like a game show.
Well, look.
And now here it is. Your guess is as good as mine. What will happen in the next 6 weeks weather-wise? And here's your host, the star of our program, Joe Cioffi.
Yeah, exactly.
Then you'll come on and for the next 30 minutes.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know. But look, if sometimes these events take about 2 weeks to play through. So if March 1st we're still in a deep trough in the west and all of this is going on in the upper atmosphere, assuming it couples, which we don't know that it will, we're talking about the middle part of March, and we don't even know what it's going to look like in terms of the. We could change to another terrible, unfavorable pattern. There are so many different ways to not get snow that you can you can go crazy. The number of favorable patterns are a precious few. Okay. So anyhow, here's what it looks. Here's what's going on at the surface. On the surface, just take everybody through Fantasyland. So we've got a low that's running up to the western lakes tomorrow into Wednesday. That's going to just all it's going to do here is bend the isobars to southwest and west during the day on Wednesday, which should help facilitate the warm up if it happens fast enough and we get enough sun. Thursday, another low. This one comes out of Oklahoma and runs up into Michigan with snows up through from Nebraska northeastward to Wisconsin and northern Michigan. That brings in the chance for looks like a warm front on Thursday in the middle of the day and a cold front that comes through. Again, the GFS has it coming through about Friday morning. The Europeans a little about 6 hours slower. I've been mentioning that there might be a couple of thunderstorms with this after it goes by. Quick shot of cold air. It's gone by Sunday. Back to the west wind. All the action continues in the west. And then I don't know if I want to believe this. I mean, it's got this sprawling high that it comes down. Every time this winter, and it's tried to do this a few times, it's wound up being BS. But you got a high at Lake Winnipeg, a low in central Kentucky. Part of that goes northeast, and there's some other, bizarre wave that develops here and goes out with all, this blue stuff that it shows, whatever that is. And then it gets cold for a day or two. Then here comes another front with more blue stuff on the 26th, even some dark blue stuff, Joe, with what looks like a strong Arctic front and a what is that, a 498 thickness? No, 504, 498 in upstate New York, 504 thickness over New Jersey. So another Arctic shot, if that's right. Confidence,
but
Joe.
Still 318 hours. 318 hours in advance, ladies and gentlemen.
Right. So we got a snowstorm. We got snow at 306 and 312 hours. We've got some bizarre event here with ice and some snow inland on the 210 and on the 240. Okay. So those are your fantasy time frames, just so you know. And just to really make it exciting, this is on Pivotal Weather. This is the 18Z snow map, and I have it centered on the Mid-Atlantic states. If it will load for me, which is it's not. Oh, here we go. Come on. There we go. So this is for the whole 16-day period, Joe. It's got 6 in Philadelphia, looks like about 9 in New York City, 20 inches at Poughkeepsie, 18 at Albany, 14 at 16 in Scranton, and also down into West Virginia and in the Carolina Mountains, a foot plus over the next 16 days. It looks like there's missing data here too, because this is like a bizarre straight line that you could almost draw from northern Illinois to southern New England. Oh, it's got 27 inches in Boston. Write it down, folks. It's going to happen. Okay, if you can bet snow depths in Las Vegas, bet 27 inches in Boston for the next 16 days.
You know what I'm going to say about all this, Joe?
What are you?
I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to use a sound effect. You ready for this?
Go ahead.
Hold on for a second.
Ba-ba-ba-da.
I've got to here.
I don't hear a thing. You there?
Can you hear that?
I didn't hear a thing.
You couldn't hear the laughing sound?
No, I couldn't hear a thing.
I'll try one more time. Hold on.
No, Rocky, you didn't pull that rabbit out of a hat.
I'll bet you the people on the chat board can hear that.
Oh, maybe they heard it. I can't hear it.
Oh, it's too bad.
By the way, there's the European from Pivotal Weather for the next 10 days.
All right.
Not a flake, not an ice pellet, nothing. Okay, so that ends that. So, do you have Briller Jeopardy or do I? I think you do.
I think I do. Hang on for a second. But you can hear me.
I hear you fine.
All right, hang on for a moment.
You're union.
That's very strange. Hang on. Oh, come on, get in there. Oh.
They're not hearing it on the chat board either. They're saying nothing. Yeah, Izzy, I'm not going to show the CMC and icon. What's the point? Okay. What's the point? We're coming up on 8:30. We managed to do an hour tonight.
Here we go. Wait a minute. Oh. Right.
So while Bullwinkle here is trying to pull a rabbit out of a hat.
Can you see me?
I see you, yes.
There he is. Okay. So yes, while I'm trying to find the Briller Jeopardy question.
Yes, you do that. And the chairman, Scott Briller, also hit Super Chat tonight. I just saw. Where'd it go? He says, hi to the Weather family. Had to do a rare COVID hospital run tonight. All my best. All the best to you and to Mother Briller as well. Hope she's doing well. Okay.
And these questions, by the way, go back 4 days. We haven't had a chance, really to use them. We put it off for a couple of times. So here it is. And we now complete Briller Jeopardy for the week with the 10 states that average the most snow list, and most snow. The 10 states that average the most snow. The list is from NOAA. Please don't blame me. I'm just the messenger. Thanks. So in other words, we have 10 states here, and it's a listing of those states that see the most snow. I presume not just for the month of February, but for an entire season.
Okay. So I'm gonna start the ball rolling by saying Maine.
Maine is number 2 on the list.
Okay.
I don't know whether or not this is a list in terms of, the greatest amount is number 1 and the least amount is number 10. Somehow I don't know if that's right. But Maine is on the list at number 2.
Number 2. So we will now add to that the great state of New Hampshire.
New Hampshire is number 3 on the chairman's list.
Okay, and let's see if the folks on the chat board may have some guesses here, Joe. Steve LaPointe says Alaska.
And Alaska is on the list at number 5. Number 5.
Number 5. So I will say, let's see. I'm trying to pick up. So Rich Rothmansky, California actually was in the list last week when we did the bottom 10, believe it or not. Um, so Christinapedia. All right, let's see how well she did because she's got them all. She put them all down here. Maine, New Hampshire. So let's
Okay.
Vermont. Do we say Vermont yet?
No, but Vermont was number 1 on the list.
Number 1, Vermont. Mark DeCara says Colorado.
Colorado's number 4 on the list.
Number 4. Well, let's. How about the People's Republic of the State of New York?
New York is number 8 on the list.
Okay. Now I will say Keith James II and Mark G. Will say Michigan.
Michigan is number 6 on the list.
All right. So how many are left?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have 3 left.
All right. So Merrill Montrose says Montana.
Montana is not on the list.
Wow. And Adam Lowe says Wyoming, along with a few others.
Wyoming is on the list at number 10.
Number 10. Okay, so how many are left?
2.
2. So let's see. How about Wisconsin?
Wisconsin is number 7 on our list.
All right, so that leaves 1 left, right?
1 left.
Tyler Fienga, Adam Lowe, bring up the state of Minnesota.
Believe it or not,
Not on there.
Minnesota is not on
the list. Okay, so we have 1 left.
You want me to give you a hint?
No, not yet.
Oh, all right.
Let's see. Mark DeCara says North Dakota. I don't think that one's on there.
No, it's not.
Mike Dutton. I hope I said that right. But it's spelled differently than the Duttons on Yellowstone. I lost him now. What the hell? What state did he stay? Hold on. I'm sorry. I just lost him. Where did he go? He had an interesting state. Utah.
There it is. That is the missing state.
Yes, Utah.
And the fact is, what I was going to say is the greatest snow on Earth, which is on their license plates.
One of these days, I have to get out to Utah. I want to do the whole Northwest.
It's a lovely state.
Mm-hmm.
I've been to Salt Lake City a couple of times, and it's very, very nice.
Okay. Any rants or raves you want to do before we say goodnight for the night?
I'm looking here. Tom Contino said he really enjoyed when I played the report that I gave from the 1983 blizzard.
Oh, and that reminds me, I don't know if I asked you this question yesterday, but somebody asked me this question to ask you, and that is, have you ever counted how many radio stations you've done in your esteemed career?
Roughly. I don't have the exact number, but I did over 200 radio markets. And I calculated that I must have done something like 275,000 weather updates. There was a one time at the private service that I was working at, there was one time I was doing something like 30 or 40 radio stations, and literally I couldn't go to the bathroom. I mean, I had to, if I was going to go to the bathroom, I better do it before a specific time, like at 4:30 or 4:45 in the morning, because once the parade began, it wouldn't stop until like 9 o'clock in the morning, and then it would start up again around 11 o'clock for the midday updates at 11 to 1 p.m. We did a lot of stations, and most of them were minor to medium market, but there were a few sprinkled in big time markets. I did 1010 Wins. I did WABC. But Tom was asking if I have any others, and I'm now that you said that you couldn't hear the laughing from the laughing bag thing. I'm wondering why that is, because the way I was trying to let everybody hear that was the same way I let everybody hear the 1983 report on the blizzard. Right. I do have one here that is funny. I don't remember the year. It was maybe 1980 or 82 or whatever. And I worked for a guy by the name of Todd Gross. He was my boss at this private weather service. And we had a station, WPLJ, was the FM of WABC in New York. They played rock and roll. And Todd did the weather there in the mornings. He was the morning drive weather guy on that station. And one hot, humid summer day, his forecast was for hazy, hot, and humid with a chance of an afternoon or evening thunderstorm. Well, as it turned out, there was a thunderstorm, but it hit not in the afternoon or evening, but it hit right in the middle of morning drive, something like 9 o'clock in the morning. And what happened? Todd immediately ran out. I mean, I'm coming in and I see him coming out of, he's saying, you take over. And I walk in and the phone rings and it's WPLJ. And they were asking for Todd. They said, "Where's Todd?" And I said, "He left." He said, "Well, we're going to have to do this with you." Because they were going to hit me with, "Why is it raining? It wasn't supposed to rain," or whatever. And I just walked in 2 minutes earlier and I didn't know what the hell was going on. And anyway, let me see if this will work. I'm going to put this over here. My camera is on this. I'm going to take this off. Hang on for a moment. This is for you, Tom Contino. Can you hear me, Joe?
Yeah, I hear you fine.
Okay, let's see if this comes through. I'm going to play just a little bit in the beginning here.
And it's mostly sunny in New York. I'm Palmer Payne, WM.
Can you hear that?
Yep.
Okay. So here I am walking into this situation. Big thunderstorm just hit New York. Forecast says afternoon thunderstorm. It's 9 o'clock in the morning. Phone rings. They're looking for Todd Gross, my boss. Todd just ran out. And here I am. And this was done with Jim Kerr of WPLJ. He was the morning man on WPLJ in the morning.
MCA News now, the Barry Gray Show.
Thank you, Palmer. Good afternoon. Tonight on Channel 9. Well, we have somebody on the phone we must speak to right now. Hello? Are you there?
Yes.
Okay, we're on the air. I know this is not in your contract to come on at this time of the day, but we have Joe Rayo on the phone of the WPLJ Weather Watch who works with Todd Gross. Todd conveniently skipped out and wasn't available when I called. What is with the rain that is pouring down on Manhattan right now? Nobody told us about that today.
What do you mean nobody told you about that, Jim? And the forecast I have that Todd threw at me before he staggered out of here says a few scattered showers and thunderstorms. And indeed, it is very, very warm. And
that's not. Did he say that, Shelley?
I have it written right here.
Yeah, Shelley.
My forecast says intervals of clouds and hazy sunshine, hot and humid, a chance of an afternoon thunderstorm.
See that? You tell Todd when he gets back.
Well, it is afternoon.
It's not afternoon.
Sure it is. It's afternoon. Listen, according to Greenwich Mean Time, it is now afternoon.
She got
4 hours from 9 o'clock.
She got us.
Yes.
It's afternoon, Greenwich Mean Time.
That's correct. We here in the Weather Center all use Greenwich Mean Time, just like we use Celsius, and we use all those other wonderful things, but please, Jim, help me out here.
Okay, you win.
Showers and thunderstorms, all right, they may have come in a little bit early. I think Todd said, please use those umbrellas.
Okay, Joe, we'll talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I still want to know if we're going to have any sunshine today. Well,
it seems unlikely.
That's too bad. Good morning to you. It's 9:30 on WPLJ New York.
Too funny. Too funny.
You have to be glib sometimes, folks, in the weather business.
Yes, you do.
Yep.
And all right, enough. Thanks for the 76 likes. Thanks for those of you who hit Super Chat tonight. And we'll be back tomorrow when I have a feeling we'll be saying pretty much the same thing we said today. But we try to make it interesting here on the Joe and Joe Weather Show. Don't we, Joe?
We do our best.
We
I hope
certainly do.
All of you who have been saying, you want to hear more Joe Rayo from 40 years ago, I do hope that you enjoyed it and got your jollies out of that. We'll see what else I can dig up in the days to come.
All right. Folks, thanks for being here. And Joe and I will be back tomorrow at, the usual time, 7:35 Eastern. Nighty-night.
Nighty-night, everyone.